Good afternoon folks, welcome to Visordown. My name is Toad and welcome to the review of the Ducati Hypermotard 698 Mono. And this is the RVE model and it is an absolute maniac and I've been razzing it around for the last 2 weeks or so. It has been a lot of fun. I've got to say, every single mile that I've spent on this thing so far has had me grinning from ear to ear. But before I go through, you know, how the bike rides and all the rest of it, let's go through some sort of top line specs for you. So price wise, this is 10,995 English pounds. So in terms of the competition, probably the closest competition to this bike is another bike from Ducati in the 950 Hypermotard, which is just under £2,000 more if you wanted to go and buy that, which has got a larger capacity engine, it's got a bit more power. The electronics probably aren't quite as up to date as on this one, as these are all absolutely brand spanking new, and you have got that V-twin or L-twin as Ducati like to put it, delivery, which the Italian bikes are so synonymous with and have been for a very long time. In this bike specifically though, we have got a 698cc engine. It's a 4-valve engine, single cylinder. It has got Desmo valve trap timing, so it's got that proper Ducati valve timing going on, and it makes 77.5 bhp at quite a heady 9,750 rpm, which is quite a lot of rpms. It is a very square engine, so it's got 116mm bore and it's got a 62.4mm stroke, so it's a super hyper square engine, which means it revs and revs and revs, and it does make most of its power right at the top end of the rev range. You got 46.3 pound-foot of torque, which it creates at peak at 8,000 rpm. That said, Ducati are claiming that 70% of the bike's torque is available from 3,000 rpm and 80% is available from 4,000 rpm right the way to the red line, which is about 10,250 rpm. Moving on to the electronics that are connected to the engine. So you've got 3 power modes, you've got 4 riding modes, you've got wheelie control, you've got engine brake control, you've got IMU controlled cornering ABS, IMU controlled traction control, you've got engine brake control, you've got Ducati launch control, and you've got a special sort of ABS setting, which is an ABS slide assist. So if you're sliding it into a corner, it'll allow you to back it in on the rear brake and sort of hold it at a safe angle without taking it too far. It's also got a wheelie assist function, which is different to the wheelie control in that the wheelie control tends to slap the bike down quite firmly into the ground, whereas the wheelie assist, if you turn that up, it will help you loft the front wheel if you're showing off outside the pub in front of your mates. Suspension wise, we have got some very high spec suspension. So it's not Öhlins, it's Marzocchi, it's full adjustable suspension at the front, and we've got a Sachs fully adjustable rear shock absorber as well. In terms of the dimensions of it, you've got a 12-litre fuel tank, it's 155 kg, and the seat height is a towering 905, I think it is, 904 millimeters. There is a low seat version, but that only takes it down to 889 millimeters, which is still mostly too tall for me. I am on my tippy toes. Having ridden it for 2 weeks, I can pretty much say without a shadow of a doubt it is the best single cylinder engine that I've ever had the experience of using. It is absolutely phenomenal. If you look at the spec sheet, it's down on peak torque on things like the 690 Duke engine bikes, so you can still get the Supermotards from KTM and Husqvarna that have got the single cylinder from KTM. Peak power is down on those, but some of the way the electronics and the ECU on this thing work together, it doesn't feel gutless at the bottom end. There is torque there to be had, but most of it comes in once you get above 4.5, 5,000 RPM, then you hit the mid-range torque of the engine is really very strong. And then once you've gone through that, you're already into the peak power zone and it's rushing you towards the red line like an absolute screaming banshee, which I think is absolutely brilliant. It took a little bit of getting used to when I first picked it up. I found it very aggressive. The throttle connection I found almost too aggressive, and the clutch action, although it's fairly light, it's it's not very progressive, sorry, I'll say. So you let the clutch out and it will just start to bite, you go out another 0.5 millimeter and all of a sudden the clutch is fully engaged and you're rolling off down the road. And to get used to it, I actually turned the engine modes down, went into a rain mode and got used to it there first, then went up into the normal road riding mode and then back up into sport again. And within no time you become accustomed to it, to how aggressive and how urgent it feels. And you know, it's like a cocaine fueled Italian waiter that's got ADHD. And once you know how to work with it and you know how to use it, it actually becomes a much nicer thing to ride. In terms of the suspension and the chassis and the handling, It's absolutely sublime. Again, all of these supermotos, they're not really designed for anything other than just bringing a smile to your face and just being really, really quick bikes on a point-to-point basis, on a track or on a B road. As I've been riding it, I haven't had the chance to take it on a track, which is a shame, but it is a hell of a lot of fun. You can feel everything that's going on beneath the tyres. It almost feels like if you dropped a 10p piece on the apex of a corner, you'd be able to tell whether or not you hit the 10p piece. The suspension's got a nice plushness. It doesn't dive through the stroke on the brakes. It's got quite a nice sort of firm setting at the front and the rear. It's not one of these supermotos where you're on the brakes, it's diving all the way through to the bump stops, and then when you get on the gas, it's sitting down on the back. It's got a really nice sort of level composure, no matter what you're doing with the accelerator or the braking system on the bike, which is it's just a lovely place to be. The only real downside of riding this bike, and this is just purely from my perspective because I am a short ass, is getting my feet on the floor. I'm literally on tiptoes if I want to get both feet flat on the floor. And that just makes some of those slower control maneuvers in car parks or turning it around in the road for photos and stuff like that, just makes that a little bit less finesse than it would be if it was 20mm shorter. But then again, all these supermotos at all, I just think this one feels a little bit more extreme in the seat height department than any of the other supermotos that I've ridden. I'm going to talk very quickly about the braking system as well, because I've got a single disc on the front, which compared to the Hypermotard 950, that's got a 2-disc Brembo setup. This has got a single caliper and a 330mm disc, which is a Brembo M4.32 caliper. It is a bloody lovely braking system. You've got a Brembo radially mounted master cylinder. You can stoppie the bike into corners, especially going down a hill. You can just squeeze on that front brake with just 1 or 2 fingers and you can get the back wheel of the bike lifting up. The ABS is so tuned in for a supermoto that it doesn't just release all the pressure out of the brake when that happens. It will actually sort of hold the bike at a sort of controlled angle for you, allowing you to sort of look like you're probably a little bit better of a supermoto rider than you actually are, which is absolutely hilarious. I find that just so much fun. The rear brake as well, we've got a 240mm disc and a 1-piston Brembo caliper. It's got a lot of power, but you have to really work the rear brake lever, and if you want to get it stepping out, using that ABS assist where it will let the back end of the bike step out and the ABS will sort of hold it there, you have really got to stomp on it and be using quite a bit of lean angle to get the thing to actually step out in turns. I'm going to talk very quickly about the comfort of it because no one's going to go long distances on this thing. I mean, it's got a 12-litre fuel tank. You're going to be lucky to get 100 miles out of it because all of the miles that you're doing, you're going to be riding like an idiot. But one thing that I noticed is it's actually very comfortable. If you keep it below motorway speeds, because anything over that and you're just trying to hang on to the thing and you've got the body shape of a parachute, keep it below motorway speeds and the bars are surprisingly vibration free, as are the pegs, and the seat is actually quite a bit wider than I've found on a lot of supermotos, and it's quite nicely padded. It's a massive, huge motocross seat, so you've got loads of room to move around, but overall the comfort's quite good. Peg distance to seat is vast, so if you're really tall, you've got loads and loads of room. It's not too much for a reach to the bars. You can twist the bars around and adjust those, and they've got the markers on there so you can see how much further forward you're moving them. The handling of it just makes you forget everything else about the bike, because it never feels like there's any corner or any braking point that you're going to miss. You can brake so late into corners, and because you've only got 155 kilograms and whatever it is that you weigh to haul up to a stop to get it into the corner, you can leave the braking so late, you can carry on the braking into the apex of the corner, and you've got corner ABS to sort all of that out. And when you've got little left-right chicanes and flip-flops and stuff like that, it's so agile, gnat-like in the way that it changes direction and snips from side to side. It's just a very impressive bit of kit. And I know that Ducati have got form with supermoto style bikes, but let's face it, the 950s, they weren't proper supermotos. They were kind of roadsters that had been turned into supermotos with big capacity engines. This feels like a proper brilliant little supermoto, and considering it's Ducati's first crack at a single cylinder for, I don't know, about 400 years, I think they've absolutely nailed that aspect and the overall handling and the way that the bike feels out on the road. Have I got any issues with the bike? I mean, One small issue is that you could have probably a little bit more usable Ducati Hypermotard from the Ducati range for not much more money. Around about £2,000 will get you the 950. It's probably not going to make you smile like this does every single time that you take it out, as much as the 689 does. But in terms of going places, you can get a bit more stuff for that. I mean, you can't buy any sort of luggage for this one, I don't think, and it's got no screen, so you're really limited to journeys of less than 100 miles. It also doesn't have a chill factor. It always wants to be ridden fast, it always wants to go fast, and sometimes when you're riding it around town, or if you're just not absolutely on it, it does start to feel like it's just grumbling at you. It doesn't want to go slow, it always wants to go fast. I mean, I'm being hypercritical here because these bikes are basically going to be bought by people who want to go fast and they just want to go and get their adrenaline fix, and they just want to go out into the countryside or go out on a little go-kart track and have some fun for an hour or two. And on that respect, you are not going to be disappointed in any way, shape or form. Probably the most exciting thing about the Hypermotard, the new mono, is not the way that it handles, the way the engine performs, or the way that it pulls wheelies and the electronics help you to do that, is what it could become. Ducati's really famous for making a single cylinder bike that was a sports bike many moons ago, and it was an absolutely fabled bike. It was of course called the Super Mono. And this bike really excites me because this engine platform that Ducati have created, I know that it's got some of the architecture from the V4 Panigale, and they you know, it's kind of like a quarter of a Panigale V4 engine. I mean, you can imagine there was a supermoto bike not very long ago that was built by Aprilia that with some slight modifications you could turn it into a properly sorted tracto bike or a race bike. In fact, I think there was even one make race series that used to go on in the UK where people used to compete them. And I can just imagine the same thing happening to this with some chassis modifications, frame modifications, different suspension, fairing, clip-ons. It could become a properly sorted little single cylinder sports bike that you could also A2 because it's below that limit. And then you could go the other way as well. You could go the way of making it slightly more off-road focused and putting road biased, knobbly tyres on it and some luggage and a slightly bigger fuel tank. And you've got a really sorted, lightweight, dual sport adventure touring bike as well. So that's probably, you know, Ducati don't seem like they're going to be able to make the millions that they invested into this engine platform back from what is a fairly niche motorcycle that isn't probably going to be selling in its hundreds of thousands across the globe. So it does excite me that the next 5 or 10 years, if you're a Ducati fan, and in particular if you're a single cylinder motorcycle fan who also loves Ducati, it's probably going to be a very exciting time if you keep an eye on the models that are going to be spawned from this particular engine platform. Anyway folks, I have got to drop this thing back to Ducati, but I think before I do, I'm probably going to take it for one last spin through the country lanes because it's been an absolute joy to ride and I've had a hell of a lot of fun on it. If you like what you see, you can get yourself down to a Ducati dealership. These bikes are in there. You can go and test ride one, put down a deposit, or just go and have a look at one in the flesh and see if it's for you. And if you've liked the video, please don't forget to hit like and subscribe so that you can stay up to date with all of Visordown's latest videos. And for all the latest news, reviews and motorcycle features, get yourself over to visordown.com. Thank you folks.